Alright, it's been a while since I've done one of these videos. This is my official rig and gear rundown of 2019. Odds are this video will go up in March. I'm going to show you my amps, my guitars, my pedals, all that kind of stuff, and stuff I use when I play live, as well as maybe just some stuff that I have here for YouTube as well. Let's do it. Alright, so being that I'm on my own, filming this is going to be a little bit awkward, so I'm going to get behind the camera in some of the shots as well. But we're going to start with my amplifiers and the ones that I use when I play live the most. And nothing's really changed too much over the last 12 months. There's a couple of additions and some subtractions as well, which we'll get into. I'll go through all the speakers and so forth as well. We're going to start with the Marshall DSL 40CR. Alright, so here's the Marshall DSL 40CR amplifier, and I've got this loaded with an Eminence Tonka speaker. When you buy them, they actually come with one of these, the Celestion V-type speakers, which are actually quite good as well. I just found this to be a tad bright, unless you've got the amp sort of cranked. So the Eminence Tonka is a pretty well balanced speaker. It's maybe a safe choice, but it's extremely loud as well. And I can run the EQ more like a traditional amplifier rather than running it at extremes now. So when I play this live, I always have both master volumes all the way up, which sounds kind of crazy, but that's like the global master volume. And then I set the crunch channel volume with the actual volume on the channel at about 12 to 1 o'clock, depending on the room and all of that kind of stuff. And once you get the amp to somewhere around there on the crunch channel, it totally sings. Now this clean channel is actually surprisingly good as well. A lot of people say, you know, Fender make the best cleans, but Marshall make also a really nice clean as well. There's definitely nothing wrong with it. And the clean channel I don't often use at all. I'm always using one of the two crunch channels, and the two crunch channels are identical. And then it also has the ultra gain channel, which I never use when I play live. So I set one crunch channel up with less gain and less volume, and the next one with more gain and more volume. That's essentially how I run it. And the reverb I usually pretty much just dime, and you would think that would be crazy, but on this particular amplifier, it doesn't have a lot of reverb. It's a digital reverb, and to actually hear it, you've got to kind of crank it up. I think I usually have the ultra at about half and the classic all the way up, so that seems to work pretty well. Overall, it's a great amp. It's a 40-watt amplifier, so it's extremely loud, and I will take this out anytime I know I need to be loud. This is the amp it's a pedalless amplifier that just, it really screams. I love it. It's probably one of my favorite amp purchases ever. I would say it makes playing easy, which is what it's all about. One of the great things about this amp is it also has a power attenuator. You click it down into high mode, it's 40 watts. Click it into low mode, it's running on 20 watts. Now, I don't think 20 watt mode has anything on 40 watt mode. You really do lose a lot of the mojo of the amp on 20 watts, but you know, in a pinch, you can definitely get away with it. I much prefer using an actual 20 watt amplifier, but we'll get to that in just a moment coming up. But overall, this thing rocks. Alright, speaking of 20 watt amplifiers, this is the Artist Tweetone 20R. I got sent this about a month ago now, and this is my new favorite little amp. This thing totally rocks. It's replaced my PV Studio Pro 112, which I've actually sold. This thing's great. It's kind of like a classic 30. We have two channels, so we have clean and a drive channel. I don't really use the clean channel, and this is how I had it set up the other night as well. Let me just zoom in a little bit here so you can see what's going on. So master volume all the way up in the room I was playing in, and don't mistake that, it's still quite loud. We have the reverb at about 3, somewhere around 9 o'clock, 9 or 10 o'clock. The bass, middle and treble, depending on the room, but that's a pretty safe bet that it's going to work. I like having the mids up a little bit more than the bass, usually always. And the treble just depends on the guitar and on the room, but generally 11 o'clock is where you want it for the places that I play, at least anyway. Volume on the dirty channel all the way up, and the gain at about 1 o'clock. So I was loud. I was playing with Dr. Rick and a few of the other guys the other night at the jam, and this amp easily held up in a really loud room. I used to take that Marshall DSL 40 there, but this just cuts it without any pedals, which I think is fantastic. So it's nice and light as well in terms of all of my other amplifiers. And this has actually replaced the PV Studio Pro 112. I much prefer this for a number of reasons. 3D projection, range of tones you can get from the amp, its simplicity. It's funny because I don't really like the 70-80 speakers that are in here, but I don't feel the need to replace it. I tried the Texas Heat in there. It wasn't a great match for this amp. It lost its kind of tweed vibe, but overall this is great. If someone was going to ask me what do I recommend out of a Classic 30, this or a Blues Junior, I'll tell them in Australia to buy this, just based on the fact it's half the price, and I think it sounds much better than both. And I've owned both and tried both before in a live mix as well, and this is definitely one of the best small combos I've ever had a chance to play. I love it. They use the EHX valves in the back as well, so they use quality valves. The build quality is good. I've run this on 10 a number of times and had no problems out live. So it's already done some gigs. It's been out to about 3 jams as well. So overall, yeah, it's a pedalless amplifier. Sure, you can run stuff into it if you so choose, but I find with these low headroom sort of amplifiers compared to say the Marshall or the Fender that's behind it, pushing a low wattage amp with pedals doesn't always make it sound better. And it doesn't always make it sound any louder. So I just use my volume control on my guitars, and this is pretty much running at maximum. So even if I don't roll my volume on the guitar all the way up, I'm getting lots of sustain. The drive channel's got heaps of gain. And I would actually say, and I've said this a couple times now, that this is easy for me to get a great sound out of as the Marshall, but it's half the size and about, I don't know, a third less in terms of its weight. So that's really cool. I thought I'd start just zoom back a little bit so you could see the size of the Fender Blues Deluxe in comparison to the Marshall DSL 40 and in comparison to the Peavey Bandit 112. It's actually quite a bit smaller in terms of its physical cabinet size. It's still rated at 40 watts and it still has a lot of volume. And in this particular amplifier, I have the Eminent Swamp Thing speaker, which is still like just a great choice for this amp. It does all the right things. It's one of those just really efficient speakers. So one of the things that you don't get with this combination is speaker distortion. The amp will stay loud and clean a lot longer than it would if you had the stock speaker in there. So if that's important to you, Eminent Swamp Thing is definitely the way to go. I'll leave some links in the description. You can check some stuff out if you want to know more about the speakers and all that kind of stuff. So in terms of why I use this amplifier, I want to use this anytime I want to be loud and I want a really classy Strat or Telecaster sound. It's just a really great pedal platform on the clean. I never really use the drive channel unless something's going wrong with the pedal board, but to get this amp up past about 4 is insanely loud with this speaker. And with the Fender amps too, they get loud quick, which is why a lot of people are blown away by them in the shop. You turn them up to 2 and they go, wow, listen to this. But past 5, it doesn't really get that much louder. It just starts to break up. But in terms of its overall sound, this clean tone is really beautiful. It's probably still my favorite clean tone out of all the amplifiers that I have. Yeah, it would be. I still prefer this over the Marshall. It's more of a refined sound, whereas the Marshall tone is more of a kind of like balls to the wall in your face kind of tone. So with my pedal setup on this versus my Marshall without any pedals or just the delay in the effects loop, this is probably a sweeter sound for that classic kind of tone. And it just depends on my mood. I'll either take this out if I want to use my pedals, or I want to test some overdrives, or I want to have all of my effects at my disposal. I'll take this. If I just want to plug in and play, I'll take the Marshall DSL or the Artist Tweetone 20R. So that's kind of how I think about it. It's just an overall beautiful, clean platform. The speaker's off-centered over here as well. And now in terms of weight, even with this speaker, it's quite, well, not quite a lot, but it's a little bit lighter than the Marshall as well. So that's another consideration. It definitely fits in, you know, the boot or trunk of my car a lot better than say the Marshall would, for example. So for those wondering how the Peavey Bandit kind of fits into everything that's going on with these other 3 amplifiers, you know what? I haven't been using it a whole lot lately. Like I mentioned earlier, I did sell my Studio Pro 112 because it wasn't getting used. I'm one of those guys that if I don't use something for a while, I sell it. I don't just hoard it or keep it in a cupboard or have it sit behind me like this in videos. I'm not that sort of dude. I don't like having lots of stuff behind me. It sort of sends the wrong message to some extent, I think, as well. But in terms of what this is doing, this is a kind of amplifier that I'll take to a jam night where I might want something lighter than the Fender or the Marshall, and something that I can still use with my pedals or still use on its own and get a really great sound. Now, the Texas Heat has been living in this amplifier for, I don't know, maybe since I took it out of the Fender Mustang 3 version 2, so quite some time. And it's a great amp. I can use it either on the clean channel with all of my effects, much like I would with my Fender amplifier, the Blues Deluxe. So I see it kind of like a mix between the Fender Blues Deluxe in terms of what it does on clean with pedals, mixed with the fact I can not use any pedals and just use the drive channel. The vintage drive channel is where I usually live, and just depending on the room and all that kind of stuff will depend on how I kind of set the EQ and the volume up. But one of the things I really like about this amp is how it feels when you actually crank it up on the drive channel. You get the gain up to about 12 or 1 o'clock, and you get the post gain up to about 1 o'clock. T-dynamics all the way up, and I usually have it on the tight setting, or it doesn't really matter, it just depends. This resonance switch, yeah, I don't really care too much for it. Wherever it is, it's fine. I don't think it makes that much difference when you're that loud anyway. Presence I usually leave at about 12 o'clock, and the reverb I just set to anywhere along my liking, somewhere between 9 and 10 o'clock, somewhere around there, and that's it. It's got a real spring reverb. These came out in the early 2000s. And they're just a really great amplifier. They're loud, you know, 80 watts RMS, even though they're solid state, 80 watts in these amps is still really loud. You get a lot of clean headroom as well, which is a benefit of the solid state stuff. And with the addition of the Texas heat speaker, you're putting a better speaker in there. You're getting a louder sound as well, much more pleasing to the ear. It kind of knocks out some of the ice picks that you might get with the stock speaker to some extent, but you can just use your high-end control here too, and the Presence to kind of knock some of that out as well. But just what the speaker actually adds tone-wise to this amp is a really great upgrade. I feel like I should keep this because I've owned 3 of them, and every time I sell one, I end up buying another one. So odds are it's just going to be maybe used more for YouTube coming up, or, you know, sometimes I go through a phase where I don't want to bring anything heavy or whatever, and then the PB Bandit's that perfect amplifier also that is still extremely loud. So as of right now, it's still in the collection. It just hasn't been used a whole lot outside of the YouTube channel. So yeah, the last probably, I don't know, the last time I took this out, it might have been close to 2 months ago, which is pretty rare. All of these other amps are being used in the last month. This one hasn't been used for 2 months. So that's just one of those things. But I'm probably going to hold on to it because the reason is it's always great to have a backup, a solid state amp that's just reliable and loud and usable. And sometimes if I'm running a jam night somewhere, I can take this and I'm not too concerned if other people are using it as I would be with some of my more expensive amplifiers. So everything sort of has its purpose, and these are the 4 amps I'm using the most. So that's it in terms of the amplifiers that I take out and play live. Nice and simple, 3 main amps plus the Bandit. And like I said, it can change depending on my mood and the situation as well. The Bandit's just a perfect amp for certain situations where I might not need it for other situations. And same with the other amplifiers as well. Convenience, whether or not I'm using my pedal board is another thing to take into account. So I look at it like that, just from a functionality and usability standpoint, which is the way I like to play as a gigging muso. So that, for me, that's perfect. Now, I've got other stuff as well, but we'll come back to that later. Let's go over to some guitars. Now, in terms of the guitars I play, we'll start with what I play the most and we'll work my way backwards to the ones that I play least. And the guitars that will be in this particular part of the video are the things that I take out and play live. This isn't my entire collection. We'll get to the other stuff at the end, but we're going to start with this. This is the PRS SE Custom 24 in Trampus Green. And I've done nothing to this since I bought it other than just change the strings and tighten up the tuners a little bit. They're a little bit loose straight off the, you know, out of the box or whatever you want to call it. But this is the one that I actually borrowed from Sky Music over a year ago. And I took it back the next day, and the following day I went back and I bought it again. Now, this doesn't have the type of neck profile that I really like on a guitar either. It's called a thin wide neck, but because it's a little bit wider, it still feels comfortable to play. I've got quite large hands, and for me, I usually go for fatter necks on guitars, but this is definitely the easiest guitar I've got to play. I love the fact it's got the extra frets getting right up there to the 24th is awesome. So I have no problems with this guitar at all. It's my go-to. Anytime I want something that just doesn't buzz, that has that split coil option, which honestly I don't use a lot because I find like the pickups in this are just plenty bright as they are, but that option's there, and sometimes it's kind of cool just to mix up the voicing of the guitar. I love the fact that it's got the whammy bar, and this is the first guitar that I've really ever used the tremolo arm on. and it works really well. It's just, everything about the tremolo system is great. It doesn't throw the guitar out of tune. I really like the color of this as well. I know a lot of people, it's all subjective stuff. I know a lot of people say they don't like this Trampus Green, but I love it. This is the tone control, this is the volume control, and you can push-pull the tone control. Three-way toggle switch, and I like its simplicity. No unnecessary toggle switches or crap on there. Plug it in and play. And you'll see that theme kind of resonating throughout the guitars that I most play live. So this Trampus Green Custom 24 PRS SE, made in Korea, is my #1 in terms of what I'm currently playing out live. As of shooting this video, this is the guitar I'm playing just as much as my PRS SE. This is the Little Crow Corvino SD, the original one, or the original body. You haven't seen this for a while because it was back at Little Crow. We've had the neck replaced, it's had a few upgrades, and it feels amazing. This neck is probably my favorite neck out of all of my guitars, even including my beloved 52 Tele. The neck on this feels unbelievable. So a huge shout out to Little Crow for fixing this up for me. I really appreciate it. It had a really thin neck. It also had some pretty small frets in there, but since they've changed these things over, it's just become an absolute tone beast. I just love it. And it's funny because when people hear this, they go, oh man, that neck pickup's really stratty, which is great because it's a mini humbucker. It has lots of top end. These are Briley pickups as well. They're made in Australia. This guitar's also made in Australia, in Western Australia. It's just a beautiful guitar. It's got that handmade vibe to it as well. So if you've ever picked up a production guitar, you know, like say the PRS or any Fender, they're flawless, right? They got the system down, the machine's cut everything. This isn't the case with any handmade custom guitar. They're a little bit different. So yeah, I'll show you some of the stuff I really like about this. Not only is it light, I like the fact it's got the F-holes. We have a three-way toggle switch, so it's nice and simple. Stratocaster bridge pickup. We can switch between neck, both, and bridge. And it's got a volume control here and a tone control over here. So it couldn't be more simple. And I'll show you what some of the upgrades we've got now. So on the back of the headstock, as you can see, we've got locking tuners, which is fantastic. I'll give you a close-up of that. The new neck is unbelievable as well. It's fatter than it probably looks on camera. It's really chunky, and I really like it. It's nice and comfortable to play. If you haven't played a guitar with a fat neck, give it a go, because it's just something about it that just feels really, really great. This has a sort of tone and presence about it that basically none of my other guitars have. So, and it's unique. And that's what I'm going for a lot more lately, is stuff that's a little bit more unique over just generic sort of bog standard stuff. Sure, I got a few of those guitars in my collection, being a lefty, but I'm really enjoying the fact that this is different. It's got my initials on it. I like that as well. I helped, I guess, sort of give them ideas and test prototypes and all that kind of stuff. And we ended up with this, and I love it. And since I've got it back, I haven't stopped playing it. It's been great. So you'll definitely see some more clips of this. I might actually reshoot a video on this coming up now that the new neck's on here, and also some of the other appointments as well. It feels good, it's light, tones are great, it's nice and simple, the pickups are balanced, I dig it. Nearly every live stream I do, I get the same question: what would be my desert island guitar? I would probably say this. This is my 52 reissue Telecaster from Fender. I purchased this at Hate Street Music in San Francisco many years ago. All of the dirt and scratches and all that kind of stuff is through playing. None of that was enhanced relicking or anything like that. Same with back here, same with the back. Everything is just, you know, as it is in terms of use. It's got a nice fat neck on it as well. Maybe not quite as fat as the Corvino now, but still very similar in terms of its feel. That neck scale was basically it's the Telecaster scale as well. So they feel very similar in terms of how they feel in the hand. This though has stainless steel frets, which I had put in after I wore the original vintage frets down. I don't like vintage frets at all for that very reason. If you have one guitar that you play a lot, then vintage frets won't last a lot if you're actually playing, you know, with conviction. So there's a difference between just tinkering and playing with conviction. This was my main gigging guitar for years. Rick and I both had very similar guitars for a long time. He had a Tele, which was like I can't remember exactly what it was, but it had the Bardens in here. That's how I ended up with the Joe Barden Danny Gatton pickups. These are low output pickups, by the way. These are on par with a lot of like vintage wound single coils, but they don't buzz. They're not hot rails. They're not like, you know, super high output pickups or anything like that. Nearly every custom pickup builder will reference the Bardens as being the best of their type. And if they're good enough, or if they were good enough for Danny Gatton, they're good enough for me. I know a lot of other players use them as well. They're steely, they got the steely sound. They sound like a Telecaster pickup. You can though, the advantage of these is even if you were to gent, you could probably still get a tone that worked and they wouldn't squeal. That's one of the benefits of these type of pickups. There's mods you can make to them, but I've just got them running in regular mode here as well. So I've got the regular neck pickup, the modern bridge pickup, so it's got a little bit more output. In Rick's guitars, he had the regular bridge, but I went for the hot one. I've had the slanted pickguard on here as well for probably 5 years or more now. And that was, I can't remember who sent that out, but yeah, it was cool. I put it on and I was like, this is really great. I much prefer that over the regular sort of switch plate that they have, which is side to side. So as you can see, the switches on an angle means just getting a little bit of extra grab is cool. We've got the vintage tuners, which I hated when I first got. Now I love them. I think next to locking tuners, these are easily my favorite. If you see me looking over here too, I'm looking at my reference monitor just to make sure that we're all in focus. It's just a really great finish on the neck. Like I said, it's got that 50 style neck, so it's quite chunky in the hand, which is great. That sticker was on there when I got it. And yeah, what can I tell you? This is just one of those guitars that I'll keep until the end of time, until I stop playing. I've only ever found one guitar or Tele that I liked more than this in terms of tone, but it had a few issues and I dodged a bullet by not buying it. I don't want to replace this. This is the one Telecaster that I'm going to keep through until the end. I think it's really great. And yeah, this has just been a fixture on the channel for many, many years, and a fixture at gigs and band posters and all that kind of stuff over the years. It really, what can I tell you? I love it, and it's got that sentimental attachment thing, which a lot of my other guitars don't really have. Maybe the Little Crow does to some extent, but most of my guitars, they don't have that sort of, you know, I bought this while I was away. That's kind of special in some sort of cheesy way, I guess, as well. I got to play this doing gigs in San Francisco, you know, the week I bought it as well. I was playing 4 nights a week over there at one point, and yeah, it was great. So shout out to Ed Ivey as well, if you do watch this, mate. But yeah, so there it is. The Fender 52 reissue Telecaster with Joe Barden, Danny Gatton pickups. And no, not Joe Biden, the politician. Bardens. Up next, we have a guitar that I get asked more about anytime I use it in a live stream or anytime that I use it on a video or demo. People are asking me, hey, what is this, the Pro Series Strat, or what is this? Is this the, you know, some reissue or whatever? No, it's just the bog standard Mexican Stratocaster. Now on the back it says it was made in 2015, so I actually had this, I think I purchased it in 2016, so I've had it a few years. This is all stock. I've done nothing to this other than add an extra spring in the back to lock the tremolo down. I do use the tremolo arm on it a little bit, but to use it, I actually have to push down pretty hard, and that's how I prefer it. I won't use the tremolo arm all the time, but since I'm starting to use one on the PRS, I started to use one on the Strat, and it works great. Now, I actually like having the trem completely locked, so when I'm bending notes, it's not moving or doing anything weird. I actually have to push down pretty hard to use it, and just for what I use it for, which is just, you know, a little tremolo effect over some chords from time to time, that's fine. It's not something that I've ever really used in the past with any of my Strats. I've owned a lot of Mexican Strats over the years, and they're just a really solid instrument. I kind of wish I had kept some of the ones that I had prior to this, but you know, live and learn. I did have a deluxe Stratocaster at one point with gold hardware and all that kind of stuff, but this just kills it tone-wise. It wasn't even close. When I purchased this, I didn't own a Strat. I wasn't interested. I had a lot of, I guess, frustrating experiences trying to get my other Strat to sound the way that I heard it in my head, and I kind of gave up and I sold all my Stratocasters. And I was playing Tele so much that the Strat just didn't even come close. It could just be that Tele, but overall, I much prefer the sound of a Tele. This was the first Strat when I plugged it in, and I wasn't even there looking for it. We were there on behalf of another friend who was looking for an amp. Plugged it in, he suggested plug it in, see what you think. As soon as I got on the neck pickup and those in-between positions, I was like, oh, this is the sound. Like, it was so good. I reckon the most underrated pickups out of any guitar are probably the Mexican standard pickups. They're a little hotter sounding, which means they're nice. They got a lot of bite, but they can also handle gain. They don't buzz quite as much as vintage pickups. And it's just a great sounding guitar. It's got the, I think, medium jumbo or jumbo frets. They're quite large. I don't know the specs of this. All I know is that when I picked it up and played it, I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to buy this. And it was a no-brainer. It's just a really nice guitar. I always liked the white Strats. I've had 2 other ones over the last sort of 12 or 15 years or something like that. And I also had that really elaborate deluxe Strat. And like I was saying, I think these are highly underrated. This sounds way better than my deluxe one ever did. No doubt about it. Might not be as nice visually to some people as the two-tone sunburst, you know, all that kind of stuff, but I really dig it. I've always liked these guitars. My other Mexican Strats that I picked up, I think one trip I was in San Francisco and I bought one. The other one I picked up in Texas, and I got to play them over there as well, which was great. Or maybe Chicago, I can't remember. But they had the maple fretboard. I really like the rosewood fretboard. A lot of people say it's very Jimi Hendrix or whatever, but I don't know, man. I dig it. I think it looks good. It feels great to play, and that's what it's all about. I leave the plastic thing on the back on. I know a lot of people take those off, but you know, I like to sort of take care of my stuff to some extent as well, and keep everything on there that, you know, it's got some nicks and scratches, but it's through use, you know, and that's what it comes down to. I don't buy something and hang it on my wall. I buy it and I play it out. I take it out live. I leave it in the car. You know, I do whatever I can to make the most out of my instruments, and we're going in order of the stuff I'm playing the most. So, you know, as we get to the bottom of the barrel, so to speak, there's still some nice guitars, but these are the ones that I'm definitely playing the most as of right now. Up next, we've got my ES335. I've had this for a number of years. I used to have a Gibson 335, and then I played this, and wow. So this is the Tokai 145L. L is lefty. This is made in Japan. For those who don't know the history of Tokai, definitely look it up. And I'll put the headstock on screen here so you can see how it's spelled, T-O-K-A-I, and you'll be good to go. So this particular guitar, made in Japan, it's beautiful. The pickups are nice and chimey. It's nice and light. This could be higher on my list depending on the week. And this is how I sort of operate as a guitarist. Sometimes I get inspired and I'm listening to more Chris Kane, who's behind me on one of the posters here, and all I want to do is play this. So this could be ahead of some of them some weeks, but this is the order as of right now and my preference. But I love this guitar. I took this out maybe 2 weeks ago and played it live straight through the Artist Tweedtone 20R, and it was fantastic. Now the thing about the 335 sound, I don't think they're as nice rhythmically for blues. You can't sort of turn them down and get as clean a tone as you can with a Strat or a Telecaster, but for lead stuff and for riffs and all of that kind of stuff, man, they're great. You know, they're one of the best dirty blues guitars out there, in my opinion. A lot of people can play them clean and do the jazz thing on them as well, but that's not what I do. You know, playing blues, I love this. It's got a 50s profile neck. Now, I had a 2008 Gibson ES335. There's no comparison between this and that. Tone-wise, this wiped the floor with it. I always said that, you know, I've said this for years about my old Gibson. It sounded like there was a wet towel over the pickups. This is just lively and chimey and bright. If you ever go to buy an ES335, put it on the neck pickup and see if you can get a nice snap once you're plugged into the amplifier. You want to be able to hear the top end. If it's kind of like a dull top end, don't buy it. I made that mistake. I blew like $4,000 on a Gibson. This cost me $1,500. It's a much better guitar than that particular model. Now, Gibson make great guitars, right? But you got to sort of find the right one. Not all of them are created equal, and that's been proven over the years as well. So for me, and I'll get to that on the next guitar that you'll see in this particular lineup, but this guitar for me is when I just want to play blues. Sometimes if I'm playing in a trio, I'll take this out because it sort of, I like that dirty sound, and it just sort of fills up the space. It's just a great guitar. It's nice and light, and this is the reason why I would play this over a Les Paul. It does have its downfalls as well. If you're really loud and you're close to your amp, the F-holes can sometimes feed back a little bit, but when you get these things dialed in, they're great. You'll actually feel wind coming out of the F-holes hitting you in the arm. The first time I ever felt that, I was like, what's going on? Like, what's going on? So there's something to be said for that in terms of how the guitar resonates and sustains. Once you feel the air blowing in and out of the F-holes, it's pretty wild. If you haven't felt that, give it a go. If you've got one of these, crank up your amp when your neighbors aren't around or at a gig and see if you can get it to do it. When you dialed it in like that, man, these are really cool to play. And like I said, I could have easily have put this above the Strat or whatever. Just depends on my mood. I'm getting excited talking about it. I love it. So that's my ES335 from Tokai, made in Japan. Beautiful instrument. Definitely one of my favorites. And having that 50s neck as well is great. Nice big chunky neck. Up next we have another Tokai. This is the Les Paul style one. This is the LS110. It's also made in Japan as well. This thing you see a lot on my YouTube channel. I tend to use it more on my YouTube channel for Les Paul style tones than I would playing it out live these days. I've played this live a lot, maybe, I don't know how many times, but a lot, as much as most of my other guitars. But the thing about it is, since I got the PRS especially, it's a lot lighter. This is really heavy. And for those who might remember too, I had a gold top. It was a VOS 56 reissue, I think that's what it was called, 56? Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a 56. It had P90s, all that kind of stuff. If you were to hand me either one of them with a blindfold on, I couldn't tell the difference in terms of weight, in terms of how the neck felt, and in terms of how they played. They felt identical to each other. So these are really high quality instruments. These are much better than some sort of standard guitars that you'll find or studio models. These are, like, to not be able to feel the difference between this and a custom shop Gibson was a pretty huge eye-opener. This cost me quite a bit. It was around 1,700 Australian dollars at the time, maybe a bit less than that, somewhere around there though. And I don't regret this purchase at all. It was great. Where I was playing, I couldn't use the P90s at all. It just wasn't an option, so I went back to humbuckers with this. I do sort of miss that Gibson. It was a beautiful instrument, but you know, dental work called, and that was the end of that. So in a way, like the humbuckers are more practical for me. Like, I like to sometimes chuck in a lot of gain, use the dirty channel of the amp, and if you're getting a lot of buzz, it sucks, right? So for me, the humbucker approach was definitely the best. I use this more at home, like I mentioned, now than I do when I played out live, but just to give you a little bit of a heads up on what it is, the body is really, really beautiful as well. We also have the same 50s profile neck. We've got the sort of Kluson style tuners, as you can see, made in Japan on the back of the headstock, and that's where it'll be if you find a Tokai. The serial number's at the top there. And yeah, it looks great on camera too. There's something about the way this looks that's great. Now, when I first got this, I didn't actually like the color of it at all. I was like, it's a bit too Slash, and I'm not a huge, I mean, I like his music, but I'm not a big Slash fan. Like, I didn't want everyone going, oh, you got a Slash Les Paul. I'm like, oh, it's not really the vibe I'm going for. But you know what, it took me no time at all to really love the way that this looks. I couldn't imagine owning a different color now, which is really interesting. It's got nice frets. I love the inlays look great as well. And it feels pretty much exactly the same to play as the Tokai ES335, except it's way heavier. You don't have those inherent issues with the feedback either. The neck pickup's a little bit dark sounding, but not in a bad way. You can dial in the top end as well. My favorite pickup on this is hands down this bridge pickup. Friggin' love the bridge pickup on this. It just sings. Up next is the Pure Salem Mendiola electric guitar. I love this thing. What's really cool about it is it's kind of almost like the reverse of my little Crow Corvino. That has the neck mini humbucker, whereas this has the bridge mini humbucker, and it has the Stratocaster neck pickup. So for me, that's a really great combination. And one of the cool things about this is this might be one of the best bridge pickups in my collection of guitars. I think this screams. The neck pickup's good, like I said in the review, but the bridge pickup is great, and I love it. So I really think they hit a home run in terms of, oh look, I've still got the plastic on it. How about that? Let's take that off. I didn't realize that was still on there. So there we go. A little bit of a live unboxing. That doesn't mean it hasn't been played live. I've shot live footage with this. It's been up on my channel already. So volume control, tone control, three-way toggle switch, kind of like a Stratocaster. It's got that off-centered thing. Now the finish is really hard to get accurately displayed on the camera, but it's a real nice red. It's got a lot of sparkle through it as well. The headstock looks pretty cool. Also, it's the same sort of color. That's a pretty accurate representation of what I'm looking at right now. On the back of the headstock, we have locking tuners as well, which is fantastic. I still think, from what I understand, these are still the original strings. They're still going. It's not a heavy guitar either. It's nice and balanced. It just plays great. There's something to be said for the Korean guitars. I would put this on par with my PRS SE or maybe slightly ahead in terms of just niceness for what you pay, and very similar to Reverend guitars. So if you're a fan of Reverend guitars, the Pure Salem stuff is great. They make a whole lot of lefties, they make a whole lot of righties. I'm in discussions with the guys from Pure Salem right now. I actually want to buy another one of their guitars because this is really, really nice. So I'm going to see what I can find on their website. But yeah, beautiful guitar. It's got a nice solid neck. It's not super fat, but it's not really thin either. So for me, that's a sweet spot. If the neck was too thin, I wouldn't play it. This could have easily been ahead of both the Tokai guitars on this particular section of the video. I am playing this out live more, but I'm maybe not using it as much in the house. It's probably been featured on about 4 or 5 videos and maybe 2 or 3 live streams since I got it. So yeah, bridge pickup of the gods, man. If you're a big fan of mini humbuckers and you like to rock, that bridge pickup is just, it's as good as it gets. Like I said, this might be my favorite bridge pickup out of all of the guitars in my entire collection. So yeah, it's a monster. Up next, we have the Little Crow Raven. This is a guitar that probably should see more action out in the real world than it does. It's a guitar I still take out and play live, but it sees way more action on my YouTube channel, but it's something I still take out from time to time. It's got the Peter Green sort of both humbucker sound as well, so if you're into that sort of out of phase or in series, or I always forget which way this works, but it does something very, very different to any of the other guitars as well, and sometimes that's a really cool sound, especially if you're playing funk stuff as well. You get a really nice sort of out of phase kind of vibe. Now, in phase. I always forget which way that is with this guitar. Anyway, it's got a push-pull pot as well, so you can mix up the sounds even further, or you can just use neck and bridge on their own as well. So 3-way toggle switch and a push-pull on the tone pot. Now, originally this had like a rotator switch on here, like you'd go click, 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 and it made it really hard to get from neck to bridge pickup. You couldn't just flick it 2 spots, right? It was literally like a 5-position switch going through all of those different combinations I didn't explain properly. So it wasn't practical playing live. It was good in theory, but it was one of those things where I was like, it needs a toggle switch. Is there any way you can just have it go from neck to bridge really easy? He's like, hey, put a toggle switch on. I was like, yes. So this doesn't get a whole lot of action for me, the push-pull switch, but I really enjoy both pickups, especially for rhythm guitar. It was a sound that if you haven't heard the Peter Green sound, go have a listen to it. It's just very different humbucker sound. It's got a very different voicing, very different character. You know, I think Freddie King used to have that kind of sound as well in a lot of his old recordings. So it's just it's a more pronounced sort of upper mid sound, more tops. Yeah, it's a different thing altogether. Anyway, that's it. So that's the Little Crow Raven. It's also got the same kind of neck that's on the Corvino right now as well. So that was another reason why I like the neck on this so much more than the neck that was on the Corvino. So it's great. They've like standardized the neck. This doesn't have locking tuners. It doesn't need them. It just stays in tune great. It's Australian woods as well, she oak as well. The jack's down here. And it's just definitely got that handmade sort of vibe about it in a really cool way. I love how this looks on camera as well. It looks just as nice in real life looking at it on screen as I'm seeing it right here. So yeah, overall, this would definitely make the list, and it just depends on my mood, like I said, but this is the guitar I still take out and play live, but I don't play out live as much as the other guitars, at least this week. All right, up next, we're gonna check out some of my effects and how simple my board actually is. Now, I've been in a lucky position to be able to review hundreds of different pedals, and these are the ones that I'll choose from on the most part. You can see I've got some of them lined up. So the last gig I did, this was how the board actually looked. And you might be saying, hey, how come the Royal Flush wasn't on there, and how come this wasn't on there, or whatever. I'm gonna tell you why. It depends on the amplifier, it depends on the situation. If I'm doing a low volume gig, like I did most recently with this particular board, I had it out with my Tweetone 20R on the clean channel. Now that's not something that I would normally do, but clean channels respond better to pedals than trying to crank up a drive channel on an amplifier at a low volume. It's one of those things, if you've ever played live, you'll know exactly what I'm saying. An overdrive pedal into a low volume clean channel sounds better. You get a fuller, rounder sort of sound, and that's why I had this particular board. Now, there's a couple of pedals on here which are pretty much staples, and that's the tuner. This is super reliable, man. I love this thing, the Boss TU2. I know there's newer ones than this, but I've had it for years. It's great. We've got the Vibler from VS Audio, which is the Leslie type of effect. Works great. One of my favorite modulation pedals ever. I actually prefer it over tremolo. I don't use tremolo anymore, which is really surprising. This has kind of replaced my need for tremolo. And this is the GCB95F wah pedal, Crybaby Classic. It used to be on a board, as you can tell. I've got the Velcro on the bottom. I've lost the feet, unfortunately. I need to find the little rubber feet now for it, but they'll be around somewhere. But yeah, actually, I'm gonna have to do that this week. I've been meaning to do that for months. And I've got the Mr. Boost pedal running as a volume boost pedal into that. So this was my always on pedal at the gig. And then I used the Mr. Boost just to give it more saturation and a slight volume kick. Now, depending on how you use a volume boost, you can have it after the overdrive. You're gonna get that same sound, but louder. But running it this way, I was just using it as a bit of a preamp boost into the Carrera, and it's just an awesome experience, or an awesome combination having these two together. It works extremely well. My friend Dr. Rick used my pedal board the other night and he said this combination was great. So yeah, I'm a huge fan of that. Now, the difference is if I'm playing my Fender amplifier, I'll sometimes have the Royal Flush in replace of the Buffalo effects pedal, or I'll even have it in place of the Mr. Boost. It just depends on my mood. Sometimes I want the clon sound depending on what amplifier or guitar I'm playing as well. So I'll add the Shelly Pony Boy in place of that. And other times I just want a tube screamer sound, right? So I'll run this. It just depends on my mood, but the main ones that I'm using most of the time would be either the Carrera and this together, or I'm running the Royal Flush and the Carrera at the same time. Occasionally still I'm running these two. I like to experiment with different tones, right, to see what I can get out of it. But this combination to some extent is pretty much my staple. If I'm using my Marshall amplifier, the only pedal I've got on the floor is the Mr. Boost or my other one, which I don't have right now. It's the Sitek Boost pedal. It's pretty much exactly the same thing, just as a volume boost into the crunch channel. And then I'm running a delay into the effects loop. So this is the Sitek Serena digital delay. It's made in Ireland. I think they moved their company over to Poland now, but you know, same guys making the pedals. They just moved country. So yeah, great digital delay. And digital delay is not something that I thought I'd ever really like for blues, but it's got a dark sort of overtone quality to it that I really love. Another one of my all-time favorite delays, which replaced my Wampler, was this. This is the Tille from Chicalis Audio Works. This is a much more simple pedal to use than the Wampler. The Wampler pedal's great, but it was a bit noisy, and I found like I couldn't get rid of that sound no matter what I tried. So the Tille is a much nicer pedal to my ear, much easier to get set up as well. So there it is right there, Chicalis Audio Works. They make some really great stuff. And now another pedal I've been using a lot, and you've probably seen this pop up on my channel a fair bit lately as well, is the Prisoner delay pedal from Jacques, which is a French company. I use this mostly into the effects loop of amps, whether I'm using the Marshall or whatever. This is the choice for that. If I'm using an amplifier at home here for a review, odds are you're seeing this in the effects loop a lot more lately. It's just a great sounding pedal. Now it has this really weird sort of rubber stuff on the back, which makes it hard to sort of get it attached to the pedal board. I haven't reversed the plate or anything on there yet, but this is something that I definitely use on the Marshall on the most part, going into the effects loop. But my main favorite still right now is Serena digital delay. I love this thing. Definitely check them out if you haven't had a chance to try them. Like I said, it just depends on the mood. If I'm just wanting that tube screamer vibe and clon vibe, which was one of my favorite combinations of pedals ever, then I've got it, and I've got it in a small package. These are much smaller than the rest of the pedals. You know, they're pretty much the size of one of like the Royal Flush. It's, you know, not quite, but it's a little bit bigger. But by the time you add cables, it's slightly wider. But the Royal Flush is still my favorite go-to overdrive, just because of the fact it's really usable, it's easy to set up, and it just does what I like it to do, like an overdrive to do. I've got a higher gain channel, a lower gain channel. I can stack them, and it works great that way as well. I'd say this is probably the best pedal in terms of simplicity and tone. The Buffalo Effects Carrera Overdrive is just like, you turn it on, it sounds amazing. I don't care what amp you're using it with. It's really, really good. The Royal Flush is almost as simple. You get more options, but yeah, it's just a different tone. So like I said, it just depends on the mood. This is still my favorite arguably one of my all-time favorites as well. I'm kind of spoilt right now for choice, but this would be the selection of pedals I would choose all of the time. You very rarely see me taking anything else out to a proper gig. Now, if I'm going to a jam night, I might experiment and take something out and try something else new here and there, and that's what I like to do. I like to try these things out in the real world as well. But one of the things you won't see me do is really risk something at a gig. I know what I'm going to get out of all of these combinations of pedals and how they'll actually sound if I'm running them in a different order as well, or if I've got one in front of the other. I know that all of these work really well with each other, which is an interesting thing, you know, like some pedals sound great on their own, but they might not stack so well, and I was only pointing at that because it sounds great on its own. But it stacks great with this, right? And there's other pedals that I've got that don't stack well with the volume boost, for example. They just don't sound good. So everything that I've got, if I was to replace this with that, it's going to work well with this. If I'm going to replace, you know, put the Odie on there, the Overdrive, it's going to sound great with the volume boost, right? Or great with the Clon, or great with the Clon, or great with the Clon. So that's the way that I look at it. I like to get stuff that I know works well together and keep it as simple as I can and keep it as small as I can. It makes moving it around a whole lot easier. Now, in terms of patch cables, I almost couldn't care less which ones I use as long as they've got the pancake connectors, so they're thinner on the sides than those regular jack style ones like this, with the exception of this one, which is one that I use going from my wah pedal into my actual pedal board, being the tuner, the first one on the right hand side of the board. I like these particular cables because they're quite long and they've got the big connector on the side, which means they're probably going to be pretty reliable. I've had no problems with this, so I'm not a brand snob when it comes to cables. This Move All one's probably $5 and it does the business. I've been using it on my board now for a long time and it's still going strong. It'll be a few years now this has been that cable from my wah over to my tuner. It works great, what can I tell you? Like I said, I'm not a brand snob when it comes to this. Now, some of these, being that I do the YouTube thing, some of these I actually got for free as well. So just to be, you know, upfront about that. This is from Rattlesnake Cables. These are great. These kind of replace the Hoser cables that I was using before. I don't think there's anything wrong with the Hoser cables. It's just I like the logo. And these are really good quality cables as well. Out of all the ones I've had sent from Rattlesnake Cables, as well as Confident Cables, which is this one, I have no problems with either of those. They're not paying me to promote their stuff or anything like that either. Just this is what was on my board. I actually ripped these off just from my pedal board just before. And I'm actually using some of these as well now as well. I picked up a couple of freebies of these when I was in Germany. They were giving these out and I thought, yeah, I'll grab a couple of these little rock board ones as well. So I just like ones that save space and to just fit well. You can't go using this on a cluttered pedal board. You know, especially between two pedals like this, for example, you know, you're gonna, let me just focus in on the pedals here. You know, you can see where the jacks are actually located. To get one of these in, you're gonna have to spread the pedals, you know, quite a ways apart. You don't have the same sort of, it's not bad, right? You still can get them to fit relatively well, but not as well as something like this. So I'll show you. This is much flatter. And you can get away with saving a little bit of extra space this way. That's why I like those thin pancake cables the most. But in terms of brand, you know, if I ever put a secondary board together, odds are I'm not using all of these kind of fancy schmancy ones. I'm using whatever I got. Yeah, and I've been lucky enough to review some pedal boards and they came with some patch cables. So I've got lots and lots of patch cables. I actually gave a few away recently because I just had too many of them. But yeah, overall, I love the Covenant cables. I like the Rattlesnake cables. Move All makes some good stuff. Hoser makes some good stuff. I just don't care as long as they're functional and they fit the purpose that I need. So yeah, look at it that way. If you want to save some space, these ones would probably be the best way to go, just based on their sort of size. I haven't tested these long term yet. They're only a few months old, but they're working well so far. Whereas the Covenant cables and the Rattlesnake cables I've had for maybe a couple of years now. So yeah, if you want to find out about them, I'll leave some links in the description. You can check them out as well. In terms of what power supplies I use for the channel, this is what I use, the Kalen power supply. It's got lots of different voltages and outputs, which makes it perfect for that. I've been using this for a number of years. If you go back over any of these rundown videos, you'll see this. It's been great, well, since I got it. Now, in terms of what I'm using live, My actual one spot finally died after about 12 years, so I'm just using a generic power supply right now, and it's working okay, but it's a little bit more noisy than I'm used to. I also have a smaller Kalen pedal board power supply, but you know what? I can't find it. So it's not going to be featured in this video. I did a review on it. It's great as well. And that's usually the one that I'll use running, say, a delay pedal into my effects loop, but I don't know where that is right now. I need to tidy up. This room is an absolute mess now. What you're about to see right now is the stuff that I'm not playing out live a whole lot, mixed with some of the stuff that I just use for YouTube videos. So let's do it. Up first is the Joyo Band Amp amplifier. This is based on a Mesa Boogie and it's rated at 20 watts, which is awesome. It's 2-channel. The only downside of these is you can't really switch channels. I don't think there's a way of doing that without manually walking over to the amp and flicking the switch, but it's not a deal breaker. This one's based on the Marshall tones, and this one is based on the Boogie. And man, they rock. They're 20 watts, they're loud, and I need to try these live at some point, but these are more so for when I'm testing out stuff on the channel and I don't want to use one of my more expensive amplifiers because the item might not actually be expensive, and I'm trying not to, you know, put too many $150 guitars with $1,000 amps, for example. So these are really great for their specific purpose, but mostly just for at home. Usually if I'm using those, I'm using this in the effects loop, which is great. They've got an effects loop. The Joyo Aquarius, which is a rock and delay pedal. I haven't done a review of this yet. I'm a little pedaled out, so I'll get around to it at some point and get it done, but that's pretty much what I use there as well. Now, we also have this, the Harley Benton Mighty 5th, I guess you pronounce it, or 5TH. It's a 5-watt amp. I really like this. This is maybe the best quality one in terms of build. It's actually quite heavy. It's got a proper power transformer in there. It's not Class D like the Joyos, not to belittle Class D, because I don't mind Class D, but you know, this feels a lot more weighty. It's more like a regular amplifier, no doubt about it. Now, in terms of my practice amplifier, I'm using this. This is the Moore Hornet modeling amplifier. This is my main practice amp. Now, I'm also using the NUX one a little bit as well, but I still like this one. I think this is my favorite overall amp. The NUX is a portable amplifier that you can run on batteries, and that's good for that type of thing, but this is just a really great little home amp. It's got lots of different options on the top. I've done a video on this anyway, but you can save your favorite sound, all that kind of thing as well. So it's pretty cool. All right, what you're looking at is the Marshall MX212 box. Now this is a 212 Marshall cab rated at 150 watts, and it's loaded with two 7080 speakers from Celestion, which were never my favorite speakers, but for some reason they're growing on me, or at least they sound great in this particular cab. And that's why I bought it. My intention was to get a single 12 cab to demo the types of amplifiers that you just saw, like the different heads and all that kind of stuff that I get in to do videos for. I wanted a legitimate cab. The 2 notes thing's great, but sometimes, you know, you actually want to hear it and gauge how loud it is through an actual cabinet. So that's the intention of this. I don't know if I'll take this out and play it live a lot. It hasn't actually seen any action yet because I've got more convenient options. You know, if I'm going to take a 20-watt amplifier out, you know, I've got the option of the Artist tweak tone, which is over here. Pick it up and take it out the door. Or I've got to grab this, which is bigger, and then I've got to grab a head, the cables, and all that kind of stuff to hook it up. So it's less practical, but the reason I purchased this was just for doing YouTube videos, and it's made a huge difference. I've also profiled it on the Kemper as well, with different heads and sounds and all that kind of stuff. So it's a really great cabinet. It's loud, and it's got a really great punchy sound to it as well. And being that, you know, I've also got the Marshall DSL 40, I kind of like the fact that it kind of matched. I know that's kind of dorky, but it was a combination of how it looked mixed with how it sounded, first and foremost, and the fact it was also 8 ohms. I think that was exactly what I was looking for. In terms of what else I use for YouTube, I use this UR22 MK2 from Steinberg as my primary audio interface. Nice and simple, 2 channels. It's something that everyone can hopefully afford, and that's how I like to keep the channel. I don't want to use any high-end preamps and all that kind of stuff that's unattainable. So most people will be able to get something like this. So that's what I opted for as well. I'm also using the digital load box from 2 Notes. This is the 2 Notes Torpedo. I love this thing. It's great for, I use it pretty much on all of the pedal demos. If I've got the Marshall hooked up to it, you know, I can just hook it up into the 2 Notes and we're good to go. Now, I also use the Kemper a lot as well. I really love this thing. it really blew me away in terms of what it was capable of and how it sounded and all that kind of stuff. For just doing straight up guitar videos, that's what I use. It's just so much more convenient, and the sound is so accurate as well to what I'm actually hearing, because all the profiles that I use on my channel, except for the one that I use for my bass guitar when I'm recording it, is everything that you see. So I'm using the Rode M3 microphone, I'm using the amplifier and the speaker that's in there to get the profiles for the Kemper. So that's what you're hearing. You're not hearing someone else's interpretation or someone else's gear. You're actually hearing my gear. So you're hearing that amp, that amp, that amp, the PV, that. I've even profiled this little guy. So you're hearing a combination of all of my own gear in the Kemper, and that's what makes it cool. Here's the inside of my cupboard, and this is where I like to try to keep all of my guitars, but you know what? They don't always fit in here. But these are the ones that you haven't seen that I've still got. So I'll just go through them quickly. I won't try to bore you too much. I've got the SX Strat back here, which I really like that. I've got the SX Tele, which doesn't see much daylight anymore, but they've still got it. I've got the 84 Dan Electro, which is the Strat with the lipstick pickups. I'm probably going to sell that. I just don't play it much. Part of me wants to keep it because I know it's one of the only lefties around, but yeah, I'm not using it, right? So these are at least 2 of these 3 guitars I'm probably going to sell. I'm probably going to sell that Tele as well. It's just not getting used. The one in this bag right here is, it says SX on it, but it's actually the Harley Benton Relic job that I did. I'm keeping that guitar. It wouldn't be worth my time to sell it, and I really like the fact I've added my personality to it. And this is also going to go. This is the Donner acoustic guitar. I just want to get rid of it. I'm not going to play it, and it's just taking up space. My goal is actually to get, it might be a bit hard to see, to get all of my guitars to fit back in this little cupboard with the doors shut, and right now I can't do that. So I'm definitely going to be flipping some stuff. There's nothing wrong with the SX Tele. I'm just not using it. So for me, if it doesn't get used for a while, it goes. The SX Strat I'm going to keep. I think it sounds great, plays great. They both do, but you know what? I prefer the Harley Benton just because I've kind of butchered it, and I like that relic job. If you haven't seen that video, I'll leave a link up in the cards. Thanks for watching, guys. My name's Shane. If you have any comments or questions, leave them below and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. This video was an absolute marathon to film. If you enjoyed it or you got some information out of it, please give it a thumbs up. I appreciate that as well. If I missed something or you wanted to know about something that I might have moved on, also let me know. I have sold a few guitars recently, including one of the Dan Electros and also the Supro Hampton. They both weren't getting used at all. I sort of had to force myself to go through my cupboard, get it out and use it just because for variation. And I thought, you know what, maybe it's better suited to someone who will actually use it. And both of those kind of players that will definitely get a lot more use out of them than me, which is fantastic. So that's cool. Now, in terms of my amps, not a lot has changed. Obviously, I've got a few little bits and pieces that I use just for YouTube now, but on the most part, my live amp rig hasn't changed a whole lot, probably since the last one of these, except for maybe the addition of the Marshall. I'm not sure if I had that on the last video. And selling the other PV was just a decision based on, man, I can't fit all of these behind me anymore. I don't want to start sort of stacking them up on top of each other either. You know, but once I start doing that, the one under it will never get used out of the house. And I'm all about taking these things out and playing it and using it. Sure, there's some stuff in the video that you've seen that I use mostly for the YouTube channel, like the Marshall box, but one day I'll take that out and I'll give it a rip. So I'm looking forward to that also. So yeah, I hope that this video has been helpful. If there's something I missed or something you wanted me to cover, comment below and I'll get back to you in the comment section. Thanks again for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and I will catch you on the next one. See ya.